You didn't work this hard, earn this title, and build this much experience just to feel bored. Welcome to The Boardroom, the podcast for senior leaders who are accomplished, capable, and quietly craving more. I'm Mark, your Chief Career Officer. And every week, we unpack real stories from leaders who have made bold moves. Plus, I'll give you practical strategies to help you take ownership of the next chapter in your career. If you're done drifting and you're ready to move forward with clarity and intention, you are in the right room. Hello, everybody. Welcome with me, Justin Schenck. He's an entrepreneur, speaker, host of the top-rated podcast, Growth Now Movement. Also, one of my very close personal mentors. Justin has been named a top 8 podcaster to follow by Inc. magazine. He is featured in Thrive Global. He has been chosen as an icon of influence. Icon of influence. Look at you. In the new media space. Justin's podcast has grown to become a podcast that is currently being played in over 100 countries every single week. And he has gone on to help countless people grow their own podcasts, their brands, their businesses with his company, podbrand.io. He also is the host and creator of one of the go-to events for entrepreneurs and forward thinkers called the Growth Now Summit Live, which I just came back from, about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago? And
yeah, it was a little over 2 weeks ago, which is time's flying.
Ton of good learning there, and I appreciate your time there. Justin, welcome to the podcast.
Mark, thank you for having me, man. I'm excited to dive into wherever this conversation goes. Sometimes you never know. But so I will say this, like you paused on the icon of influence thing. That was a title given to me probably 8 years ago. And when you think about podcasting, like 8 years ago, there weren't many people doing it, right? So like I was brought into these events to teach podcasting, to talk about like the medium. And then they gave me that icon of influence title. And I'm like, I'm putting that in my bio because it sounds amazing. And so it sounds way cooler than it really is, because 8 years ago, I was one of a few people doing it consistently. And I was like, but it sounds awesome. So I'm taking it and I'm going to run with it.
It's fantastic. Okay, how did you get into this space though of like entrepreneurship and starting new things and building businesses? Like, how did you get into all of that?
Yeah, so I kind of always knew that I was going to have to find my own way into making money. Even though I did well in the corporate space a couple times, I was just miserable in a 9-to-5. And I would say like the first little taste of what entrepreneurship was, or even the idea of that I could go do this, when I was 19 years old, I got a job in direct sales. And in direct sales, you make your own schedule, you earn your own money, you do all those types of things. And I absolutely loved it. And I was really good at it too. And so that was kind of my first taste. Some things happened in my life where I had to move away from where I was working. And so ended up in the corporate, space and medical sales management and all that stuff, and did fairly well. But I always had this pull and this draw to get into entrepreneurship. Actually, through my 20s, I had 3 failed businesses that I had tried to launch on the side, having a little success and then long-term failing. And so the idea originally behind my podcast that I started 10 years ago was I was going to interview entrepreneurs, figure out how to be a better entrepreneur, pick their brain, and then be able to finally leave the corporate world. And what ended up happening was 6 months before I launched the show, my mom lost a 20-year battle to opioids. And so the show became more about finding self-love and how do I find happiness in my rock bottom moments. And I was asking all these questions really for me. And then I think the authenticity in the conversations, the vulnerability that I was having in those first 2 years really grew the show. And then podcasting became my business, which led to opportunities like speaking, growing my own events, building companies and exiting them and doing all these things. But it all started with, hey, I'm going to buy this $60 microphone and see what happens after that. And here we are 10 years later, and I've been able to do some really cool things.
Man, that's incredible. All right, I want to talk about the 3 failed businesses, because I think that the idea of entrepreneurship is really scary for a lot of people who do have those 9-to-5s. They're like, I'm a leader, I'm doing this whole thing. I've got, I'm building my corporate career. And I have a lot of folks in their 40s, 50s, sometimes in their 60s going, what if I left and did my own thing? And it's terrifying to people. And I think the idea of terrifying in entrepreneurship is, what if I fail? So talk about the 3 failed businesses. Like, how did you not just be like, well, I guess entrepreneurship isn't for me, and then just give
Yeah.
up?
So yeah, I've never really had a fear of failure. And I think it kind of goes back to when I look at my life, like nothing was ever easy, right? Like, grew up in a household where my mom battled opioids. My dad would spent some time in jail. Like, I was a terrible student. And then I was like, well, if I could overcome all those things, like, why not just try all this different stuff? And so the first business was me and a business partner actually put together seminars and expos, which is funny that I kind of do that now. Put together seminars and expos that focused on personal and professional growth. And we did everything from like a customer service seminar to like a nonprofit expo. And we did all these things. And, we had some early success. So I live in Berks County, and we did the first ever Berks County Nonprofit Expo. It was a massive success. And we're like, okay, cool. Why don't we take this and put it into the for-profit sector? And we'll put together like a for-profit expo, essentially like a business expo. We paid a guy named Bill Rancic a lot of money to come speak at it. And Bill Rancic was he won the first season of The Apprentice. Right. And so he was kind of a big deal back then, because we're talking, I was 24, 25 when I was doing this business, and it was a big deal at the time. And we ended up selling 3 tickets to that event. So we paid him a ton of money. We spent a lot of money on advertising, and, ended up selling 3 tickets. But here's the caveat to that. We somehow worked a deal with Groupon, and our event was listed on Groupon, and those 3 tickets were sold through Groupon. And if you know how that works, you have to cut the price in half for them to list it, and then you only get half of that. And so we literally made no money. Those people who paid through Groupon, because they couldn't refund through Groupon, we had to pay them back their money. And then we were like, okay, this is not moving forward. But I'll say this. My mom, although she had her issues, she was an incredible mother, and I feel blessed to be able to, have been raised by her. I called her after we decided to shut the doors of that business. And I said, Mom, I did do that. I don't think this is for me. We failed, like everything, we're shutting everything down. And my mom said, Justin, you're headed in the right direction. Just keep your head up and keep moving forward. And I was like, oh, okay. So I that's all I needed to do is keep moving into the right direction. A couple years after that failure, I wanted to develop an app for iPhones. This is back when it was expensive. It was hard. It was all these things. And by the way, this is a great idea. And if anybody ever wants to run with this app idea, they can take it. It was kind of like a dating app, but for friendships on college campuses. And it was called Spark with 2 Ks, because it was used to spark a conversation. And so it was a close radius social media app where people could interact with each other on campuses. They'd have to have a college email address, all these things. And the idea came about because I was speaking at a college, and I was talking to a couple of the heads of whatever. And I was like, what's the biggest issue with like retention here? And they go, people don't make friends their freshman year, and they change schools. If they're able to make friends freshman year on campus, they'll stick around. And I was like, oh, this app would work. The app never even launched because of how much money it cost to even do it. Although a great idea, it never ended up launching. But losing a ton of money and learning a huge lesson of like, okay, that doesn't work. And then my third failed business ended up being my first successful business. And so that was podcast production. And so like when you're a podcaster, what do people do? They come up to you and go, hey, I want a podcast. How do I do it? And I was like, cool, I'll just do it for you. The reason it failed the first time was because there was no upfront contract or payment with people. They had to do all of this work before I even started getting paid on the back end stuff. And so that business ended up failing, and then I had to go back into corporate for a year to rebuild up my bank account, and then started to build on the side a coaching and production business within the podcast space. And so people were paying me X amount of dollars up front for my time, and building that way. And so I kind of look at all those businesses and I go, what lessons did I learn? What did I fail on? What actually made it fail, and how can I reimagine it? And what's funny is I now host live events, which I said I would never do it again after that terrible mess of a business. And now I do it again, but I've learned the lessons through those 10 years of like, how do I correct this? What's different here? I mean, when we first did it, social media wasn't used for business. It existed, but it wasn't used for business. And so now we have these great platforms of podcasting and social media to be able to do it. That was the longest rant ever, but that was the only way I could tell you about all 3 failed businesses and then how it led to some sort of success.
Well, I mean, and that builds like an incredible resiliency though, so that because I'm sure you've had moments in business where you're like, this sucks. Like this is hard. I don't like this right now. And then you get to kind of fall back on that resilience that you've built over time and go, okay, but I can get through this.
Yeah. Nothing, there's always a new obstacle. in whether that's in business, in a career, in a life, there's always a new obstacle. And it's whether you're going to push through or you're going to quit, right? There's always those images, like they're like cartoon images of people like digging through a gold mine, and then the one person quits right before the gold, right? And that's true of so many different things. I mean, I podcasted for 2 years straight and not many people listened, right? Like I had like 30 downloads an episode for the first year and then slowly gained traction, but I just kept going. And I think that's the greatest story through entrepreneurship. Like 2019 was my best year in entrepreneurship at the time. And then 2020 hit, right? And I was going to double my income that year. And I lost 75% of my income overnight because it was at that time, it was mainly speaking and my event. And I was like, okay, like, what do I do? And there was a moment of like, do I quit? Do I just go back into corporate and get the safe money? And thank goodness I have such a supportive wife who was just my girlfriend at the time. We lived together. And I was like, I think I need to go get a job. And she looked at me and she's like, we've got this. You can figure this out. We've got this. And I hired a coach and figured it out. And it was such a blessing to have a partner like that could support me. But there are moments of like, what do I think I'm doing? Like, this is crazy, right? Like every time I have like the new idea, like I just launched Growth Now Elevate idea. And I'm like, what am I doing? Right. But now we've already sold tickets to it. I'm like, okay, cool. Like we've got the momentum, but you always have that inner voice of like, okay, that next big thing or like that next thing that I'm pushing through, what do I do? And I think the important piece is you have to surround yourself with the right people in order to get through it. And if you don't have the right people on your side, it's a lot easier to give up.
You talk about this a lot with like the different kinds of people that you surround yourself with. What are those categories of people that are so important to have in your corner?
Yeah, to give kind of context to this, we all know the quote, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with," which is a great quote and very true in many ways. But when I first heard it, I was like, okay, I have to get rid of all my loser 19-year-old friends and go find 5 millionaires and hang out with them, right? Because when you're 19, that's all you want is like, how do I make $1 million and buy things, right? So very, very quickly, I was like, that's the really dumb quote because what millionaires are going to want to hang out with a 19-year-old loser, right? And so fast forward, obviously that quote kept coming up and I was like, yeah, I get the context. But like I was creating success in my own life with some of my friends, living a completely different life. And I was like, I spend a lot of time with them. We're on different levels, no judgment on any way, shape or form, but that's just the reality. I was like, so that quote doesn't really make sense. Finally, fast forward, I'm creating true success in my life. And I looked back at that quote and I was like, let me figure this out. Did I have specific people that I intentionally spent time? Not necessarily the most amount of time, but it was intentional time. And I realized that there were 5 roles that people filled in my life throughout. And those people changed over time, but these 5 people played specific roles that I intentionally used the relationship. So the first one was a cheerleader. So this is the person that when you get off the phone with them, you feel like you can run through a brick wall, right? You call them, you go, hey, I think I've got a million dollar idea. And they go, no, it's $1 billion idea because you're at the helm, Justin, like that kind of person. The second person is your bruiser. So this is the person that is willing to kind of push you a little bit, right? Stretch you and say, hey, look, it's a good idea, but I think you're going about it wrong. And they're willing to really kind of guide you from a tough kind of perspective. That bruiser really, really cares about the long-term vision, but they want you to be at your maximum, and they're willing to call you out on your BS, so to say. Third person's your softie, that shoulder to cry on, right? Because things go wrong. I just talked about 2020 when I lost 75% of my income. Thank goodness my wife is my softie because I can go to her and be like, oh my God, everything's falling apart. And the most important part to the softie is that they help kind of brush you off and pick you back up. They don't let you stay in that space, right? We all have those friends who are the dark cloud and the misery loves company. Like, do not make that person your softie because you will be miserable for the rest of your life. Fourth person is a mentor. I look at a mentor a little bit differently than most people. To me, a mentor is somebody who has something innate inside of them that you want more inside of you. So like my mentor is a guy named Fabio Viviani from the show Top Chef. He is the biggest giver I've ever met. And I like giving, and I want to do it at his level, right? And he gives from a perspective of like he doesn't need anything. His businesses are worth $500 million, right? He doesn't need anything, but he gives and he gives and he gives. He'll give you the shirt off his back. And then the fifth person is a coach. I believe at any given time you should be financially invested in your future, whether that's a career coach, whether that's a wellness coach, a spiritual coach, a relationship coach. I've had all of them. It's an important piece to help you move forward because when you're financially invested in your success, you make the moves you need to make. when you're not paying, when it's free, dime a dozen, right? You're like, I'm just not making the moves, even though somebody just gave me great advice. So invest in your future.
Yeah, I love that. Um, wow. So those people have changed for you over time. Have any of them stayed consistent, like the same person in the same role throughout your 20s and 30s?
No. I will say this though. My cheerleader's been my cheerleader for 10 years. So that's a really long time. My bruiser's been my bruiser for about 7 or 8 years. Um, and then my softie's been my softie for 7 years because we've been together for 7 years. The mentor and coach will always change the most. Because obviously, as you grow in life, you don't always need the same coaches, right? A mentor, as you evolve, will change because you're looking to level up in some sort of area in your life. So they change the most, in my opinion. But as you grow, those people will change, right? Like I'm fortunate enough that those first three people have grown with me over the last 10 years, right? So I'm a couple steps behind some of them, but as long as I'm staying a couple steps behind, they can continue to play those roles, right? But if I surpass them, you go, okay, I might need to look somewhere else for these individuals. But over the course of 20 years, 20 plus, oh my God, I'm old, 22 years, I'm 41 now. As we look I heard the quote at first when I was 19. They've changed and evolved for sure. As you go through different careers, or you might have a different mentor or whatever, like that'll change. But I'm fortunate enough that I'm locked in right now with some amazing people.
It's a good place to be. All right, that's really cool. I've heard of it. I've heard of this in so many different ways, like personal board of directors. Like there's all sorts of different things for it. But I love your version because I think that it parcels out what each type of person is, right? Like how they interact with you. So I like that you kind of have intentionally created that and kept up with that over time because I think we can all benefit from that. It's just making sure that we're identifying those folks and being intentional about it. Do you then have conversations with those people? You're like, this is what you are to me, and then this is
Yeah,
what
it's
I am to you. Like, how does that work?
that's a really good question because my people know who they are because I've come up with this formula, right? These five people, and so they know that they are those roles. I don't always recommend you tell the person because then they feel like they have to serve that role. And so what I say is like, look, like find the people who have those things innate inside of them. Right? Like, a cheerleader is somebody who's charismatic, has a lot of energy, like those types of things. A bruiser is somebody who is very aware of their surroundings, somebody who has, helped build things, somebody who is wise beyond their years. And so like if that's innate inside of them, just understand that when asked the right question, they're going to play that role, right? Like if I need a cheerleader and I call Chuck up, who you've met, like you call Chuck and I go, hey man, I'm thinking about this idea. I'm a little nervous about it. I don't know if I'm the person that needs to do it, but I need the encouragement. He's who I call. If I'm sure of the how, the intention, like if I have the idea and I'm like, I don't know how to do this, whatever, I'll call my bruiser, right? And I will say this, if you identify who your bruiser is, don't be afraid to call them. I find that people, once they figure out this formula, they go, oh yeah, they're my bruiser. I go, cool, when's the last time you talked to them? And they're like 6 months ago. Yeah, because nobody wants to be called out on their BS, right? But the bruiser is the most important person, in my opinion, to help move the needle for you because they're willing, like the cheerleader will allow you to be in your BS sometimes, but the bruiser, not necessarily. And so like, I would say no, don't tell them, but again, it's the people that you have intentional conversations with that can play those roles because I'm going to call them when I'm working through things. And by the way, this works for personal things too. Like we're talking a lot about business, but like, for instance, if you're like, hey, I am in a mode right now where I want to be a better husband, better father, better whatever, make sure your mentor is somebody who hasn't been through 9 divorces, right? Like you understand, be intentional about those conversations you're having, and then utilize them in that way. Hopefully that answered your question.
No, I love that. It's really cool too, the idea of like you investing in coaching. And this is one of the reasons that I joined your mastermind group is to invest in coaching for myself because what I realize is I'm asking my clients to pay a lot of money for me to coach them through something specific, right? Something
Yeah.
intentional, a career change, finding better alignment, greater purpose, like, kind of figuring out the next chapter in their careers. And then I realized that I was trying to move through a pivot as well and wasn't investing in anything. And so, how can I expect other people to do that if I'm not doing it myself? And so, investing in that coaching has been a game changer, right? Because especially in a mastermind setting too is always really interesting. If anyone out there, if you've never joined a mastermind for coaching, they are fascinating and fun and interesting, and some of the coolest relationships you'll ever have. But I like it's really pushed me to like figure myself out, and that coaching piece that I avoided calling myself a coach for a really long time. I've like developed a greater skill there because I am seeing what good coaching looks like from the outside, and then I can be a good coach to other people. So I like that coach is on your list because I think it's one of those areas that people overlook so frequently.
Yeah, and I don't ever ask somebody to pay me more for something that I haven't paid the dollar amount. And so it also adds a little bit of confidence when you do the ask, right? Because as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as salespeople, as whatever, when you are asking for the sale in some way, shape, or form, if you aren't willing to invest that amount for yourself, then why would anybody trust you, right? And they can feel it in your voice. They can feel it in the confidence in which you say it. I have this new event called Growth Now Elevate, which is a high ticket event. And I have no problem going, it's $2,000 because I've paid more than that for a 2-day event, right? And so like, it's okay, cool. Like I've done it, so therefore you should do it too. And it's really those types of things. It's like that piece is also important to invest in yourself. And the idea of a mastermind too, like beyond the coaching aspect, is when you're spending time with people who are operating at a high level, who make moves, you don't want to be left behind. And that's why the group setting of a mastermind and being able to spend time with those people, that changes the game. I always say, get in the room, be the dumbest person, like make sure people are moving at different levels than you, and then you're going to, uptick. There are some times that I'm in rooms that I have no idea how I ended up in, surrounded by insane people. I'm like, why am I here? I mean, grateful I am, and I'm going to get the most out of it I can, but like, that's where you want to be. It's like, oh, I had people say to me at Growth Now Summit, they were there last year and they came again this last time. And they go, Justin, the first time I came into the room and I realized the types of people that were there, I was like, I don't belong here. Now, everybody made me feel super welcome because that's the community that I've been able to develop. And then the second year, they're back and they're like, I feel like I belong here because I know it's like family. You have to push through that discomfort first, right? Because like, oh, I don't know if I belong in this mastermind or whatever. Push through the discomfort, put yourself in there, and very quickly you'll find that you do belong.
And I think that that's the case with so many things in life where you're like, I'm scared to do this thing, but I'm drawn to do this thing. And then when I do it, I finally realize I should have been doing this so much sooner, so much faster. I should have made this pivot earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I hemmed and hawed around launching the mastermind for 2 years because I was like, who am I to charge X amount of dollars for people to join this mastermind every single year? I mean, yes, I've paid it before. I've paid more than it before. The most I've paid for a mastermind, I don't mind sharing, it's 20 grand. My mastermind's not 20 grand yet. But like, okay, I'm willing to go like charge somebody that though. And so, but for 2 years, I was like, who am I to do that? Blah, blah, blah. To the point where I launched a community instead for a whopping $59 a month. And that was a complete and utter waste of time. And that was nothing but the universe nudging me to go, dude, over here. And so finally I was like, all right, I'm pulling the trigger. And that was 3 years ago. I pulled the trigger on it, and it's been an incredible 3 years. But like, it's always like, okay, I'm launching this new thing. Will anybody say yes? And I remember I hosted a retreat, and I think 15 people were in attendance. And I was like announcing the mastermind. And I did this whole thing where I was like, it should be X amount of dollars, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I think how I did it was like, the mastermind's this amount of dollars per, for the year. And half the people were like, I'm in. And I was like, whoa. And then I was like, I don't want to go to the next slide because I was giving them a discount as like the founding members of the mastermind. And I was like, all right, I went to the next slide. But again, it's that test of like, do you trust yourself? I didn't know if anybody would sign up at this retreat. And still to this day, you have people like Brittany and Naveed, and they're still in the mastermind 3 years later. And what a gift it is to be able to do life with them. But they were at that retreat, and here we are.
Man. All right, so then what's the advice to not hum and haw for 2 years? Like, how do you push yourself to do the big thing, the scary thing, whatever it is? Because I've got people going, I want to quit my job and go be a consultant because I want to, build my own schedule. Or like, I think that I'm ready for that C-suite position, but who's gonna trust me? Or I'm in a male-dominated industry and I'm the only woman in the room and I am afraid to put myself out there. Like, how do you push beyond oh God, how am I gonna do this into action?
Yeah, reality is you're going to die. We're all going to die. And would you rather be on your deathbed and go, I did the damn thing, or have regret? Right? Like that's it. And look, and if you fail at whatever you're doing, you can go get another job.
Yeah.
Right? It's like if somebody broke your heart, you're going to be hesitant to fall in love again. But being lonely sucks. What's worse? To go through that heartbreak where you're upset for a couple months again, or to be lonely for the rest of your life? So this is the reality. We're all going to die. And so you need to truly have a come to Jesus moment with yourself and go, am I okay with being unhappy with where I am for the rest of my life? Whether that's a year, 10 years, whatever. Because the truth is, if you take that leap of faith, whether it's to go become a consultant or go try and leave this company to go to the next thing, and they find out and then they fire you, somebody will hire you. You have the skill set in order to have a job. You have the skill set to be the consultant. But the reality is, like, don't have regrets. My mom died when she was 58 years old. And I think that that's why I have this life first, business second mentality, is because I was like, you don't know when it's going to end. I could walk. I hate when people use this as an analogy, but it's true. I could walk out in the street and get hit by a bus tomorrow. By the way, don't say that to Michelle, because Michelle goes, I've been hit by a bus, and she'll share the whole story. That's a true story.
Amazing.
But like, when you look at that, like, that's it, man. Take the leap of faith, because nobody's going to do it for you. And I think that's what a lot of people are waiting for. Like, I know people who have been in careers their whole entire lives, and they do really well. And they've financially locked themselves in this quote unquote trap, right? Like, I make too much money in order to go become a consultant. But they're sitting and waiting for somebody to come up to them and go, hey, I'm going to pay you $100,000 a year to consult with our business. And I know 9 other companies that are willing to do that too. Doesn't work that way.
Right.
Just like if you're the senior VP and you don't ever say, hey, I want to be CEO one day, they're not going to go, hey, we want you to be the CEO. You have to let people know. You have to let the universe know what your dreams and wishes are, and you do that by asking. And you go to that first company and go, "Hey, we want to pay. This is what I bring to the table. Pay me $100,000 to be a consultant." And you realize then you're getting paid $100,000 to work 1/10 of the time that you're working for the company that you're working for, and then rinse and repeat until you've matched whatever salary that you're making. It's okay to tighten the bootstraps every once in a while to build. People are so afraid to not have their 7 vacations a year. You could do that if you really wanted to.
Yeah, I like that. All right, I want to switch gears really quick because you and your podcast, you have talked to some of the coolest, best, most interesting folks in the entire world. I want you to think through some of the people that you've met and that you've interacted with on the leadership side of things, because so many folks that I deal with are trying to hone in their own leadership style, their leadership skills. They want to make sure that they are best of the best. What are some of the things that you've learned about leadership? What makes a good leader? And how to define and refine that skill set.
Yeah, I have a friend who's been on the podcast a number of times. He spoke to the mastermind before you joined, but his name is Jason Redmond. He's a retired Navy SEAL officer. He was shot 8 times, including in the face when he was on duty, almost died. And now he's obviously a speaker, an author, all these things. He talks about leadership, and he talks about leading yourself first. And so many people miss that. Right? They try and lead by saying, do as I say mentality versus do as I do mentality. And I think the greatest leaders that I've talked to are the ones who get dirty with everybody else, who don't see themselves as better because they're the CEO or they're the head of the thing or the whatever. They're just like everybody else. They come from a place of humble confidence which is really hard to master. How can you be humble but also lead, with a pace in which people will follow you? And that's honestly by showing up and doing for your people. And I think a lot of times I think about even my own life when I've had jobs and the bosses that I've had. My favorite bosses were the ones who, worked alongside of us versus like, oh, go do this. I'm too good for whatever. And so I think it's to look at yourself first and say, would you follow you? And I think that that's a conversation most people don't have. They just go, oh, I got the title. Now I'm the leader. Okay, would you follow you? How you're approaching this, would you follow you? And the reality is they probably wouldn't. And so you have to figure out, how can I be the person that I would want to follow? And so that's probably the best quick answer I could give you, as far as like, lead yourself first. And then you'll find others will follow.
That's really cool. There's there's a clarity to that a lot of people don't take the time to sit down and figure out. I find that that's the case with so many things though. That first step, that like introspective, I gotta figure me out, is like never our top priority for some reason. It's always like an external thing. And I think that it is what causes people to fail on a number of things, right? Like if you're not clear about your own purpose, your own values, all of the things that you try to go do start falling apart because you don't have that solid foundation. And so I like that, any major inflection point, any major decision, if you're looking at yourself as a leader, all of those things start with a little look in the mirror and intentional time to do that before anything can be successful.
Yeah, and honestly, it's because if to be introspective is messy. You have to look at a lot of parts of your life that you don't want to look at. You have to be truly honest with yourself, which is almost impossible. But the reality is, getting through that mess will be so incredible on the other side, right? Like I look at it from this standpoint. Like I was a self-sabotager in relationships. Like the second I'd fall in love, I'd immediately like tailspin, right? And these women who I thought I loved would leave me and break up with me or whatever. And I was like, finally one day, I sat down and I go, I'm the only common denominator behind all these relationships. Like how many times people in relationships are like, women or men, you go, I always date the bad boy or the scumbag, or they always end up being the scumbag. I go, well, you got to figure out why you're choosing the scumbag then if you keep doing it over and over and over again. Right. And so what I did was I was like, I need to figure this out. And so I hired a relationship coach, and I paired that with a therapist who specialized in this type of thing. And so the therapist identified for me that I didn't have trust issues. I had abandonment issues. And I was like, I've never been abandoned. He goes, look, yeah, I get that your parents loved you, but they chose things over you. And so therefore it's been implanted in you since childhood that you have these abandonment issues. And then the relationship coach allowed me to see my faults in order to show up as the man I needed to become. She did this exercise with me where she goes, Justin, I want you to, before our next call, I want you to write down everything you want in a woman, literally everything, how she moves, the way she looks. Is she supportive? Is she independent? Is she this? Is she that? All of these things. So I made this huge list. And we get on a call and I read the list to her and she goes, cool. Are you the man that deserves her? And I was like, no, I'm not. And so I had to do the work. And so I had to truly look at myself and look at all the things that I went through and try and figure all this out. And now I have the greatest wife in the world that would have never given me a second chance if I didn't do that work, right? And so, wow, like what a blessing that is that I was able to look at myself and go through the weeds. Same thing in your career. You know how many people only make it to number 2 over and over and over again? They'll go to one company and make it to number 2. Well, I want to be number 1, so I'm going to go to the other company that's going to give me that chance 5 years from now. Number 2. No, I'm going to go to the next. It's not because of your skill set. It's something inside of you that you're not being honest about. And you have to figure that out. And it's the introspection of, okay, what's the thing that's not allowing me to be number 1? Right? And then it's like the Tony Robbins thing. When you were a child, whose love did you need more, your mom's or your dad's? Oh, my mom's. Well, why your mom's? And what did you do in order to get that love from her? I was a people pleaser. Great. Number ones aren't people pleasers, right? So you have to unpack the mess in order to reach the next level. And people are so afraid of it. But look beyond that pain point to say, okay, well, if I want to be number one, I have to do this. Is it worth it to me to unclog all this mess that we have going inside? Because a lot of people don't.
Well, and so many of the people that I deal with every single day are at that point where they go, "Oh, everything in my career has kind of happened to me, and I would like to take ownership of my career now." And then think that the first step is a resume, right? Like, whoa, wait. Like, if we're taking ownership of our career, we have to own the internal stuff first. And so there's that, there's the clarity piece. There's identifying who you are, what makes you unique, what do you bring to the table, and doing all that work within yourself, right? Through a coach, working with somebody, allows you then to walk out and go, okay, I own my all my shit. So now I can walk out and be successful. You don't just walk out and be successful, or then you hit number two over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if you're good with being number two, great. Right. Like, but I remember sitting through trainings when I worked for companies, whether it be sales trainings or whatever, right? Like, by the way, I've been taught every possible sales tactic, from Sandler sales training to you name it. Like, I've sat through it. But one thing I always noticed was that when I was sitting through these trainings and they'd bring in this leadership speaker or whatever, and I was sitting there, my leader wasn't in the room, right? And so when I look at that, I go, okay, if you think you know it all, you need to go to more trainings. You need to have more conversations. When people go, it's time for me to take control of my business, they probably think that they know it all already. Like, they're just not giving me my roses. Hold up. Let's unpack this a little bit. Why haven't you been given your roses yet? Why haven't you been given that next tier, that next level, that next whatever? And they will always point fingers and blame. Oh, it's because the CEO won't leave, or it's because this one person in HR doesn't like me, or this, that, and the other thing. Okay, cool. Then why won't the CEO leave? Even though he said he wanted to retire for the last 5 years. It's because he doesn't know who's going to replace him, right? And so therefore you haven't stepped up into that role. Why doesn't that HR person like you? Because you're inappropriate. Fix your shit, right? Like, these are the things that, like, we always blame other people. But you honestly, like, I don't even know how we started talking about introspection. This has been the whole conversation that we've been having. But that is literally 1,000% that will change your life. You got to do it.
Yeah. Hardest part too.
Yeah.
Hardest part. And it's so funny how few people are aware enough of even not even like the negative parts, right? Like, because I think there's like that connotation, like when you look it can be really, really messy, but people don't even know the positive parts to that either. Because one of the first questions that I typically ask people in coaching is, I'm like, all right, brag for me. What is something that you do way better than anyone else ever? What is your superpower that makes you better than other people? And almost no one has a real answer to that,
Yeah.
right? I get things, a work ethic. Okay. We all think that though, right? Like, what are you actually better at than everybody else? So even when you ask people to look inward for the positives, they can't do it because we spend so much of our time focused externally. I like that we got off on this tangent.
No, it's great, and it's so true. But that's also societal programming.
Yeah.
Don't brag. Don't brag about yourself. Don't do that. And a lot of times when we hear questions, we give the answer that we think the person wants to hear versus just the actual true answer. And I'd even say to some of those people, like, if they're listening to this and they're like, oh yeah, Mark and I had this conversation. I said I had the work ethic, whatever. Ask yourself this question right now in this moment. When you look at yourself in the mirror, do you immediately think negative or positive? And I don't mean your physical appearance. I mean everything about you. And a lot of times it's usually negative. And that's why it's very hard for people to come up with, like, what's the one really good thing? Because they've never been asked that from a truly, like, actual interesting perspective. And so if you can give the true answer, that's what sets you apart. When you walk into a company and they say, what do you bring to the table? I'm sure 90% of the people say the same damn thing. And the person who gets hired is the one who said something different, right? Who gave the real answer. And so that's kind of what you need to focus on, is like, how can I start to talk a little bit nicer to myself so I can answer those questions honestly? And that's really hard for people to do, man. This is somebody who the self-love thing took a really long time. Like, I asked that question for 2 years straight on my podcast. How do you find self-love? And it wasn't for my audience to figure it out. I was trying to figure it out. It's the hardest journey because it's personal for everybody. Everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think then too, giving yourself permission to show up as yourself, hard to do, right? I was at a conference after I was at Growth Now Live with you, and was talking to our friend Angie Callan, and I said, I feel like I don't belong in this space. And she said, why not? I was like, well, I'm a lot younger than a lot of the people here. Like, the gay one, like these like older women like must think I'm insane. She's like, why would you think that? Like, that's what it's what brings you your personality. It's what makes you outgoing. It's what that's not a negative. Why would you think that there's a negative here? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm still struggling with that self-love piece, to be like, I am who I am and it's okay to just be who I am and I can operate in the world that way and take it or leave it. Right? I
Yeah, I
still
mean,
struggle with
I
all this.
I would ask you I would ask you the question. Not that this is a coaching session or a therapy
Let's
session. I
do
would
it.
ask you the question: when you were a child, were you told to keep down a lot?
Yeah, of course.
That's why you're like, I don't know if I belong.
Exactly.
And you know what's crazy about all this stuff is like 99% of our programming happened before we turned 7 years old.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it sucks that you went through those things, but as an adult, you got to figure it out. Like, so many
You
people
don't have
use
a
it as a
choice.
crutch and all the things, but like, I think it's so funny that every time that next band-aid I got to rip off, because we're all a work in progress and I'm still ripping off band-aids and trying to figure it out. And every fucking time it goes back to childhood.
Yeah.
Every time. It
It's
is
infuriating.
crazy. It's crazy how much of our programming happened before the age of 7. And this is like neuroscience. They figured all this out. And most of it's a subconscious. Like, the way you're operating through life is because of something that happened to you and you didn't even know it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I was coaching a coach actually at that conference, and we were talking, and she said, I always get stuck. I have all these great ideas. I really get stuck on implementing. So, okay, well, what happens when you go to start implementing? Well, I jump on ChatGPT and I have it make cute little cartoons for me to make my, okay, great. So like what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that it's not going to come out the way that I want it to, or it's going to look cringy, or it's going to look bad. Okay, where does that type of thing come from? And I think I asked her three questions, and we got to, well, when I was little, I had to bring my dad my report card, and that was how I got love from my dad. And so I had to prove I was good enough in order for my
Mm,
dad to love me. So I have to prove that I'm good enough in order to go launch this part of my business.
it's wild.
Oh, really? You have to prove you're good enough just to go launch a business. Okay,
So,
interesting.
yeah,
And she was
it's
like,
it's crazy. It's
oh gosh.
crazy. Like, when you actually have those deep conversations with people, like they it's funny because you said 3 or 4 times. They actually, there's a whole thing, and you can look it up because we won't go deep into it because I know we're coming up to time. But there's something called 7 layers of why. So you have to ask, okay, somebody goes, I want to make $1 million a year. You have to ask them 7 times why, in some way, shape, or form, to get to the real reason. I want to make $1 million. Why? Oh, because I want a nice house. Why? Why do you want a nice house? Because I want to support my family. Why do you want to support your family in that way? They go all the way down, and you find out that he grew up poor, and his dad pointed out to him all the time that the nice cars and those people have made it. I wish I could have made it, right? And so, like, those types of things, when you unplug, it's like 7 layers of why. It's an interesting thing.
I like that. Okay, we're gonna have to experiment with that. It's gonna be my new coaching tactic for the week, and we'll see how it goes, and I'll report back to you.
I love it.
I like that. Man, this is so interesting. I feel like we could run on tangents for forever, but I won't keep you any longer because you and I, anytime we get together, can just chat and chat and chat and chat and chat. So let's leave people with one last thing. I want to know, like, if you were to give advice to your younger self, career advice to your younger self, let's picture you at 19 years old. What would you say to yourself that you think would 19-year-old Justin would need to hear?
This is one of the hardest questions to answer when people ask these types of questions, because I'm a believer that life unfolds exactly the way that it's supposed to. And so I would say something, if it were the reality and I could go do that, I would say trust the process. Right? Like no spoilers, 19-year-old Justin, but trust the process. Because the reality is life is ups and downs. It's failures, it's missteps, it's all these things. And most times people have a misstep, which could easily be corrected, but they feel that that's their dropping off point and that's the end. And so I would say that. But from a career advice perspective, young Justin knew how to say the right thing, but didn't always follow through with his actions. And so I would say to Justin, people are watching you, so say, do as you say. Don't do it the other way, right? Do as you say. And I think that would have changed a lot. But again, everything happens for a reason. On the back end of all that stuff, if I did that, if I actually 100% was the person that I could speak my way through back then, I wouldn't be here. I would probably be, the vice president of some company somewhere. Right. And so again, everything happens the way it's meant to happen.
Yeah. And look how much happier you are as an entrepreneur.
Dude, right after this call, I'm going to go have my cigar. I've got no other calls for the rest of the day. Just lock it in. I'm
sorry, everybody, but we just have to talk about that's an 11 a.m. cigar, just so we're all aware of the time right now. I love it.
Sometimes it's 9:30 a.m. cigar.
That's a cigar commitment.
One of the best pairings with a cigar is coffee.
Oh, really? I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to smoke a cigar with you. I'm not going to do it.
We're doing it in Nashville.
There you go. All right, everybody. Thank you, Justin, for being here. This has been so much fun. I always get such crazy insight from you whenever we talk. Your life is a weird, wild melange of all sorts of crazy things, and I'm so appreciative that you share it so openly. Thank you for being my coach. Thank you for lending your expertise to this audience, and I'm sure you'll be back.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye.
Thanks for spending time with me in the boardroom. If today's conversation sparks something for you and you want clarity on what comes next, visit theboardroom.net to book a reset session or to learn about upcoming leadership retreats. Your next move does not have to wait. I'll see you next episode.